Thank you, council members. And I'm sorry to be the time police. Just want to make sure we can get as much public comment in as we can. So I will go ahead and start the public comment period. As I mentioned, there were 12 groups that requested, these are organizations that requested additional time, which I was able to provide each of you with 3 minutes. If you don't need that 3 minutes, then please feel free to give back your time to anyone behind you. So I'm going to ask J.M. Brown with the Parks and Recreation Committee, Ad Hoc Safety Committee, to please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. There we go. Okay, I see you up. J.M. Brown, Bonnie, are you ready with the timer? You'll have 3 minutes, Mr. Brown. You are *9 to unmute.
Okay, there. Mayor Myers, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. I'm J.M. Brown, and I've served for the past 2 years as Chair of your Parks and Recreation Commission. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening on behalf of commissioners who served on the Safety Committee mentioned by Mr. Elliott earlier. Those members are Vice Chair Jane Mio, Commissioner Jillian Greenside, and myself. Let me begin by saying how appreciative we are for the Parks and Recreation employees who shared stories with us about the impacts of dangerous and threatening behaviors they experience while working in our parks, open spaces, and facilities. Because some of that behavior has been exhibited by people living in encampments within our city parks, and because one of our key recommendations that was passed unanimously by the full commission called for greater clarity about rules pertaining to people living outside, we felt it was important to provide input this evening on the ordinance under consideration. Members of the committee support the purpose and intent of this ordinance as outlined in the resolution, and specifically the ordinance's efforts to prohibit camping in our neighborhood and community parks. We believe it is a good first step, as Mr. Elliott said, toward providing more access for all users of our parks, improving the safety of our employees, and providing more protection for our natural resources. We believe more work can and should be done in the future to support those goals outlined in our Parks Master's Plan, namely to better protect our environment, including vital waterways and sensitive habitat areas from destruction, as we have seen happen over and over again in places where folks have camped. Should the council be interested in expanding areas within our park system where camping would be regulated, including more of our open spaces that would be prohibited for camping, the commission could certainly be a good venue for exploring recommendations to bring back to you in the future. Lastly, we recognize that any successful effort to address healthy outdoor living will include securing more low-barrier sheltering options in our community, as is being addressed in the city's collaboration with the county. We appreciate that this ordinance tries to achieve a balance of providing places for people to sleep safely outside with places that remain accessible for all members of the community. Thank you for your time tonight and for your service to our city.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next up, I have Carol Polhamus with the West Side Neighbors, and then following Carol, Reggie Meisler with the Santa Cruz Democratic Socialists of America will be right after Carol. So if you guys can queue up. And
Mayor, if we could just have everyone not, I'm lowering everyone's hand, if they could just not raise their hand until their name is called.
Please don't raise your hand until your name is called. Carol Polhamus. There she is. Okay, Carol, just *9, and then you can unmute. Please put your hand down if you're not the person speaking right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I was on the phone and Zoom because I wasn't sure. Sorry. So I shut the phone off. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members and staff. My name is Carol Polhamus. I'm a retired educator and 40-year resident of the Lower West Side. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of the West Side Neighbors. Westside Neighbors was established 3 years ago in response to a proposal for RV camping in the Delaware neighborhood. Our 1,000-plus members live primarily on the Lower West Side. Our membership is fairly evenly split between young parents of school-age children and seniors, with businesses, students, and others rounding out our group. Parents are very concerned about safety issues in our city parks and want their kids to be able to walk or bike to school safely. The Anza seniors voice concerns about not feeling safe to walk in their neighborhood. Our neighborhood is plagued with bike thefts, break-ins, drug dealing, a recent shooting at Garfield Park, a recent meth bust of someone living at the end of Delaware, to name a few. Neighborhood safety is definitely a priority. Parents want parks and rec programs for their kids and are concerned about recreation budget cuts, and seniors are concerned about budget cuts to city services. The Lower West Side has been significantly impacted by people living outside, resulting in environmental degradation of our open spaces and parks. Negative impacts include garbage, human waste, discarded drug paraphernalia, etc. A recent example was this weekend's cleanup of a chop shop in the Schaefer Road area, which yielded many stolen bikes and parts. This past summer, there were 4 camping-related fires, which caused serious concern. Santa Cruz has a greater per capita homeless population than San Francisco or LA. We know that many of our homeless suffer from chronic mental illness or drug addiction or both. Our governor describes our mental health system as a massive failure. What we have been trying to do clearly isn't working. We know the city has neither the legal mandate nor the funding for homelessness services, mental health, or addiction treatment. All are the responsibility of the county, which receives the funding to provide them. We're really happy to hear progress is being made in working with the county and asking for help from the state. We encourage the City Council to insist that the county provide managed shelter and safe RV parking on county property with much-needed services, particularly for those with chronic mental illness. We don't want tent or vehicle camping allowed in residential neighborhoods. We want our parks open for everyone's use. We can't spend our limited budget on the repeated cleanup of unsanctioned homeless encampments. We want an equitable approach so that the needs of the 2,000 homeless are balanced fairly against the needs of the 63,000 other residents in our city. We support this ordinance as a step forward toward restoring that balance. Thank you all for listening and for all the work you and the staff have done on this challenging issue. Thank you.
Carol. Next up is Reggie Meisler, and again, just please press *9 to raise your hand, and then you'll be ready to speak. Anyone else, please keep your hands down. I'm just going to call the people who are scheduled to speak now. Go ahead, Reggie. Thank you for being here.
Hi, this is Reggie Meisler. I'm speaking on behalf of the Santa Cruz chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. We vociferously oppose this ordinance. And let's really be real and sort of frame how this is going. Just 2 months ago, while City Council was on break, City Manager Bernal, with the support of city staff, tried forcing through an executive order to sweep hundreds of people from San Lorenzo Park, despite knowing the conditions of frigid wind and rains that they were throwing people into, despite knowing that there was no alternative shelter available, despite knowing that we were in a COVID lockdown, and despite knowing that the ICUs were full. Make no mistake, city staff knowingly delivered a death sentence to the campers at San Lorenzo Park. And it was only thanks to a coalition of activists throughout the county known as Stop the Sweeps, with the intervention of a district court judge, Susan Van Keulen, that city staff was finally forced to abandon their plan. This city staff, who so callously and recklessly worked to displace houseless people this past holiday season, are the same city staff who are now trying to draft this set of policies to reinforce their ability to do that same thing again. And while this ordinance claims to be informed by the more thoughtful work of the Community Advisory Committee on Homelessness, CASH, we have spoken to former members of CASH who do not approve of city staff using their name as though it were some sort of endorsement. While CASH often focused largely on meeting the needs of the houseless community, the temporary outdoor living ordinance is far more interested in where houseless folks cannot be, what they cannot do, how best to legally allow police to continue displacing them, destroying their survival gear, and impounding the vehicles they use for shelter than it is in helping them survive. It shouldn't have to be said, but if a houseless person is living in a public park, that does not mean that housed members of the community are now unable to use the park. Many residents continue to use San Lorenzo Park with children, in spite of the large encampment that resides there. Bigotry is not an accessibility issue, and the city should not treat it as such. One would hope that Black History Month might provide some much-needed perspective on the notion of developing apartheid-like policies based solely on the bigoted fear of wealthier, whiter housed persons. But once again, here we are. Instead of city staff serving the needs of Santa Cruz's most vulnerable working-class residents, they are instead asking the police to subvert our rights to soothe the nerves of some of the most privileged individuals in our community. In this ordinance, city staff argue that public lands have essentially been privatized through their use by the public. We instead argue that police have been privatized by Santa Cruz's wealthiest residents to target the houseless. The presentation by Parks and Rec was particularly nauseating, pure bigotry laced with false appeals to foul environmentalism. We hear time and time again, thank you, defund police, fund supportive housing.
Thank you, Mr. Meisler. Next is Danny Drysdale with the Harm Reduction Coalition of Santa Cruz County. Please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Go ahead, Mr. Drysdale. Press *6 to unmute, and you will be ready to go.
Hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, that's Ms. Drysdale. Thanks, Donna. Good evening, council members. My name is Danny Drysdale. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Syringe Services Program Coordinator for the Harm Reduction Coalition of Santa Cruz County, speaking on behalf of our organization. As a public health-centered service provider that works closely with our unhoused community members in the city, we are very invested in the outcome of this discussion tonight. HRCSCC opposes this proposed ordinance wholeheartedly. We do not believe that giving the city police department more tools to criminalize people sleeping outside is going to positively impact any part of our community. In fact, we think it will lead to more negative outcomes, including more syringe litter, more fatal overdoses, and more infectious disease being spread. The broad strategy of making whole areas off limits for sleeping and living is unethical and unworkable, and the specific regulations proposed around camping that is quote-unquote allowed in certain areas would be a disaster. I specifically want to point out that reference to, quote, improperly discarded hypodermic needles is extremely vague and would allow police officers to write citations based on their own interpretation of what, quote, improper disposal means. And we've seen firsthand how police officers and other city employees have claimed that used syringes stored in a proper and sealed sharps disposal container are somehow improperly disposed or stored or even considered litter. Furthermore, under the new state law, AB 2077, any citation issued as a result of a syringe possessed for personal use would be invalid and could be challenged under that state law. Syringe possession is now fully decriminalized in the state, and attempting to include syringe possession in this camping ordinance opens it up to legal challenges separate from the ones about COVID, disability rights, and Martin v. Boise. There's been research done on syringe litter and the reasons that it occurs, and it's extremely clear that this ordinance would create more syringe litter. Santa Cruz County's Health Services Agency 2019 report on syringe access and litter showed that the two biggest factors that contribute to syringe litter are fear of police and lack of access to programs like ours. This ordinance would substantially increase the stakes for people to keep their syringes on their person in a sharps container, thereby incentivizing them to litter syringes elsewhere. Allowing people to remain where they are allows service providers like ourselves to consistently provide sharps disposal containers and collect those containers. Moving people from place to place makes it that much more difficult to find and provide disposal services for those people, and evidence shows that will increase syringe litter. Besides that, if we can't reach people with our services, they will not receive clean syringes or naloxone, leading to a strong chance of an increase in the spread of infectious diseases and fatal overdoses. If other service providers, such as the Homeless Person's Health Project, also struggle to reach those people, the negative health outcomes will be even greater. In short, it is our opinion that this ordinance is unethical and immoral, probably illegal in multiple ways, and would lead to worse health outcomes for the entire community, including an increase in syringe litter, fatal overdoses, and infectious disease. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Brent Adams with the Warming Center Program Footbridge Homeless Services. Please press 9 on your phone to raise your hand. Brent, are you on? You could press *6 to unmute. I can't tell. Brent, are you on? What was that?
I can't tell either. KB Foster keeps raising her hand.
Brent Adams, are you able to get on tonight? Please press there he is. Hi, Brent. Press *6, please, and we're all ready to go.
Sorry for that. Hi, it's Brent. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Brent, go ahead.
All right. Firstly, we encourage council persons to vote no on this proposal, but if one must vote yes, let it be a yes and. Admittedly, an 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. tent camping is vastly different than we had been enduring for many decades under that previous camping ban. But we're wondering what has become of the city plans to establish the HEAP-funded jumpstart of a navigation center, let alone the interim shelter. There were several $1 million spent, right? Where are the day service programs? Where even is the well-funded rhetoric of housing the chronically homeless? It all seems to have evaporated, and all we're left now with is a tent that must be broken down in the morning with nothing much else offered. Meanwhile, Warming Center program established Footbridge Services Center, serving more than 800 discrete individuals with storage, 1,000 more with laundry, showers, donation materials, and device charging. We've transformed homelessness to something vastly more dignifying. You may know we've done this largely with our own, on our own without city or county help. Certainly, the city has worked with us to remove a third of the trash of material from the Felka Street camps that existed for more than a year without complaint. We're only removed for fear of river water rise. We've established the agreement camp in Harvey West that's been there in place for 4 months. The city has honored it with garbage, porta potties, and AFC weekly showers. Noting the amount of materials and the establishment of large encampments, we do understand the need for constraints, though there have been new ideas implemented, including agreement camps and the possibility of non-profit permitted transitional encampments. Yet here we are tonight with this proposal that would establish the ability to set up tents between 8 and 8 and bring those items into storage. If there are specific areas where people may set up camp, given our success with the Harvey West Agreement Camp, our nonprofit would like to discuss what shape that can take. Today, Supervisor Koenig and I visited the Agreement Camp. We witnessed many people enjoying the park, playing ball, hiking, etc. Relating to storage, we become highly trusted for the integrity of our work. It can be difficult to build trust within that population of those people who sleep outside. It's been our goal to vastly reduce the amount of materials people carry throughout the day and keep belongings safe at night. We'd like to work to help provide the best opportunity to provide such storage. But tonight we see the proposal as a legal exercise that a municipal corporation thinks it needs to engage in but what of creative, inventive thinking? Clearly, what's missing here is the opportunity of local churches and nonprofits to operate managed camps that both the city and the county have obliged themselves to stage. The city clearly has been failing at serving this population and that it plays host to. This is the perfect time now to make a permit process for nonprofits and churches to share the load of this, our shared challenge. Please tonight consider adding a permit process for nonprofits to operate such encampments. Thanks for this time.
Thank you very much. Next up is Greg Pepping with the Coastal Watershed Council. And just press *6 and you can start, Greg.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mayor Myers, Vice Mayor Bruner, Council, and staff, good evening. My name is Greg Pepping, Executive Director of the Coastal Watershed Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this topic, and thanks for the leadership you're demonstrating in bringing this topic up. Thanks for going straight at this. The Coastal Watershed Council is in support of the ordinance. In this community, like in many river towns, in addition to people experiencing homelessness, the poorest housed people live right next to the river. And you won't hear many of their voices tonight. They're at their second job, their third job, or they're exhausted from those jobs. They're making dinner, dealing with kids, etc. The Coastal Watershed Council is hearing from those families who used to use the Santa Cruz River Walk, that longest city park surrounding the San Lorenzo River. We hear that they don't feel safe. They don't feel comfortable. They do not demonize people experiencing homelessness. They just don't feel safe, and they don't use that park. That's a park equity issue to consider that's not often included in this conversation. They don't matter more than people experiencing homelessness. They also do not matter less. Separate from seeing this through a parks equity lens, I have just 3 suggested clarifications or edits. The first one is, in order for this to be successful, we need regulatory and operational clarity, which is what you heard as a reminder, a request from the Parks Director and the Parks and Rec Commission again today. Now, you know, if you pass this after a second reading, I think you have regulatory clarity. What I mean by operational clarity is what's really going to happen on the ground. We have a chief of police who has always been very direct with the U.S. Council, even when it's what you might not want to hear. We're fortunate. And I think you need to hear, the community needs to hear from the chief more details on what this is going to look like out in Santa Cruz. It doesn't fix everything, so what does it do really? Do we have the officers who will enforce this, the overall resources, the will? Are we truly going to see a shift into a proactive and reasoned enforcement of the new ordinance? The second piece is about the outboard side of the levee. You have the inboard side of the levee, but not the outboard. So from the path into the river, but not outside. And you're going to have tents right by the path. And if you have tents by the path, you're going to have tents and stuff in the path. I continue to be amazed that we can't even keep the path clear. I think it's a very basic, low bar, a test of our enforcement ability and will. So I'd like to include the outboard side of the levee. And then the third one is very specific. The red map of prohibited areas has a gap. Not all of the San Fernando River is included. Some of it is, but not all of it. Again, regulatory and operational clarity, number one. The second is outboard side of the levee. And the third is having all of the river in the prohibited areas. The Coastal Watershed Council supports the ordinance. I think we can be pro-river and pro-human. Thank you for your leadership. It really matters.
Thank you, Greg. Next up is Josh Peterson with the Ghostwriters Watermen's Club. Please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Press *6 and you'll be,
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for your energy and attention on this very important issue. My name is Josh Peterson. I'm president of the Ghostwriter Watermen's Club, a local 501c3 nonprofit organization that has worked for the last decade to raise awareness of ocean safety in our community. Now, we as a group strongly support this ordinance in order to protect our community and environment. Now, whether you surf, swim, paddle, or walk on the beach, many of us in the community would agree that our beaches and ocean waters together are the true heart of Santa Cruz. However, today, through the uncertainty of camping ordinances, the city of Santa Cruz is actively contributing to the pollution of our beaches and ocean. By allowing homeless encampments to entrench, the city is unintentionally facilitating the buildup and concentration of trash, hazardous materials, and human waste that will eventually run into our ocean. There's no way around it. I don't think there's a single person on this call tonight who would, as an individual, knowingly pollute. Not at all. We all love clean beaches and ocean waters. But by enabling homeless encampments to entrench, our city leaders enable gross pollution of our beaches. 11,000 pounds of trash collected along the San Lorenzo River a couple weekends ago, dumped by those living in homeless camps. By letting these homeless camps persist, the city is complicit in that massive level of dumping and pollution. Now, on a summer day in July, when a 9-year-old junior lifeguard kid running on the beach with friends gets stuck by a washed-up hypodermic needle, the city will also unfortunately be complicit in that horrific event. And it sickens all of us that this has actually happened in the past and will persist with these encampments. Now, none of our civic leaders here wish this pollution on our environment and ocean. There's no way. But Mayor and Council, this is up to you now. In a world of increasing pollution, you can actually do something. You can act to mitigate our problem locally by prohibiting homeless encampments and preventing their massive buildup and concentration of waste. You guys can keep our beaches and ocean beautiful and clean. So on behalf of the ocean community and Ghostwriters of Santa Cruz, all families and individuals who rely on clean beaches and ocean waters for physical and mental health, I urge you to ban homeless encampments, pass this ordinance, and protect the heart of Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Denise Pan with the Santa Cruz People's Kitchen. Please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Denise Pan, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Santa Cruz People's Kitchen. We are a loosely organized group of about 15 to 30 volunteer community members who provide meals, supplies, and other essential services to our house's neighbors, and we are completely funded by donations. Our position on the ordinance, the outdoor living ordinance, is absolutely against it. Outside of its questionable legality, we've determined that this ordinance undermines the humanity of our unhoused neighbors. One of the main points brought forth by Lee Butlers and Tony Elliott in their presentation is surrounding the issue of quality of life, bringing up trail riding, park use, and issues of safety. However, this ordinance doesn't actually solve any of these issues, and not to mention that it undermines the quality of life of the individuals who are forced to live outdoors. They're going to be forced to face harassment, imprisonment, and increased indebtedness, and be put in a cycle of an increased cycle of poverty, addiction, and homelessness. And I've also wanted to mention a note on the disability provision. Not only does this not really do anything to help the person who is disabled or the people who are disabled, it doesn't provide them with any resources, but simply gives them an extra 96 hours to move. But it also doesn't change any rules around the conditions of their movement. Another thing I would like to mention around that is that encampments actually provide safety and community, particularly for houseless women who depend on each other and who aren't forced to be alone during any point of the day. I think that there are a couple of things that give us insight into what this ordinance is really about, and that is the criminalization of homelessness. The first reason is that there are no alternatives being provided. Instead, homeless people are expected to be shoved around like herd animals, and the other thing is that provisions such as camping on private property, so long as they are out of sight, really shows us that this is more about houseless people being an eyesore than it is about their humanity or any kind of actual equity or change in resources or in the way that we handle things. It's really about more policing. I also wanted to note that one of the main people who helped write this ordinance and who is in staunch support of it is City Manager Bernal. And in a personal email that I got from him, he described that many of the individuals at the encampment in residence to San Lorenzo Park are not actually homeless, but are there to access and use drugs and to party. Clearly, homelessness is an issue that is a struggle, that is traumatic, that nobody would ever want to be there voluntarily, nobody would ever want to be voluntarily in. But our own city manager doesn't seem to have a grip on this idea. And in addition, the criminalization of homelessness has shown over and over again that it really doesn't do anything but make things worse. It increases people's indebtedness and systems of cyclical entry into the prison system. And for these reasons, SCDK urges you to vote against Agenda Item 25. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Norse, you are up. Press *9 and you're ready to roll. Robert Norse, you're up. Robert Norse, are you there? Robert, I see your number, I believe. Press *6. If you're not Robert Norse, please put your hand down. Please press *6, Robert. Okay.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can community solidarity regulate city council's bad behavior? The community has taken years to recognize it's not just compassion but common sense to take direct action to correct the city managers' mistakes. The Santa Cruz community finally knows it's wrong to harass, cite, arrest, fine, or jail folks for sleeping at night where they must. Yet that is the underlying message still of the new temporary outdoor living regulation ordinance, no sleeping. Chief Mills' drive away the desperate law is worse than the prior sleeping ban in many ways. It does not actually provides for specific safe places for homeless people to sleep outside or inside. Simply restrictions and punishments that can be imposed largely at will, unaccountable to the City Council for 30 days. Not that the Council has ever shown any interest in protecting the poor from police sweeps. It's the community that is mobilized to do that. Food Not Bombs, Black Lives Matter, Nomad, Homeless Outside in Santa Cruz, Cop Watch, Stop the Sweep, Santa Cruz Union of the Homeless, HUF, and a variety of other organizations who've spoken here tonight. The law and the Council provide no expansion of shelter, nor clear promise that the current COVID expanded shelter will be maintained. The so-called $20 fines for violations are actually $198 when you add in court costs. The penalty for sleeping in a park, so-called engaging in improper temporary outdoor living, has been increased to a misdemeanor for the second offense. That's jail, and indeed possibly prison, something we thought removed at the recommendation of the city's own Homeless Issues Task Force 20 years ago. The law criminalizes possession of sleeping bags in so-called at-risk areas, the areas city gentrification masters want homeless people gone from, like downtown, the beaches, the parks. The law ignores the Catch Committee's recommendations, as have been pointed out. Any law or set of police practices that criminalizes the poor in our community for necessary survival behavior is wrong, abusive, futile, costly, and presumptuous, particularly egregious in a pandemic. Courts in a series of decisions over the last 3 decades have recognized this in the Tobe, Eichhorn, Pottinger, Jones, and Martin versus Boise cases. Unfortunately, the only way this law will be dumped is if the community actively dumps it through direct action, scornful publicity, mutual aid, and legal challenges after your council rubber stamps it. Will that happen? Police may put up fences and city bosses issue orders, but it's up to us to decide whether the community will allow these actions to go unchallenged. And thank you to the community for hearing me.
Robert. Next up is Joy Schindler-Decker with Sanitation for the People. Please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand, and then you want to press *6 to unmute. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I'm speaking on behalf of the Mutual Aid Working Group, Mutual Aid Group Sanitation for the People. Sanitation for the People is a mutual aid group working for sanitation and waste management services for all. We clean up and we work on system change so that people living without houses get basic services. We work from a non-judgmental harm reduction ethos. We oppose the proposed temporary outdoor living ordinance because it proposes very little to improve life for people living unhoused in Santa Cruz, while increasing the burden on those residents exponentially and essentially further criminalizes homelessness. In addition, the exceptions for disabilities are shamefully inadequate. They put undue burdens on disabled people to get doctor's letters and are cruel in demanding that people move every 96 hours. I hope the letter of opposition from Disability Rights California is taken very seriously by the city and council members. What we have found working with the community living at Highway 1 and 9, helping residents with waste management weekly and on dumpster days, is that the reasons for garbage buildup are many. First, after months of no garbage collection at all, the buildup is overwhelming. Most people do try to keep things clean. Some people are not physically able to clean. Some garbage is the result of storm damage, where tents and possessions end up abandoned, and neighbors don't want to be accused of stealing when cleaning up. There's also a lot of well-meaning help from sympathetic community members that ends up as garbage that is no one's responsibility. People don't have access to laundry, which creates an enormous amount of clothing and bedding that ends up ruined and ultimately landfilled. If the goal is to prevent entrenchment, in order to protect the environment, there are much better ways to do so. First and foremost, provide increased and adequate sanitation services, including toilets, hand washing stations, laundry and shower trailers, and garbage collection. The city and county have a responsibility to cooperate on funding these services. Why should the poorest people suffer because of this dysfunctional bureaucracy? Preventing entrenchment also prevents stability. And we know that people benefit from stability on so many levels. They have continuity of care with outreach workers. They can be found for second doses of the COVID vaccine. They can build community with each other and those who support them. They can be found by friends and family. They can rest and recover from physical and mental illness. They can access services where they are rather than having to expend enormous energy seeking out those services. Lack of stability increases physical and mental health issues, increased hunger and malnutrition, increases the likelihood of substance use disorders to cope with destabilizations, increases loss of survival gear, personal possessions, and essential documents. Okay, I will end there. I have more to say, but thank you very much. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Kakayun Sahile with Stop the Sweeps. Please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Go ahead, please.
Should I assume that that's the person you authorized?
Are you with Yasmin, are you with Stop the Sweeps? I think so.
Yes, I'm reading the statement on behalf of Stop the Sweeps.
Got it. Great. Go ahead, please.
The grassroots movement Stop the Sweeps stands with our unhoused neighbors and against the temporary outdoor living ordinance. While the idea sounds positive for the city to supply a facility for unhoused people to store their belongings during the day, the issues of accommodations and accessibility arise. The ordinance refers to a reasonable quantity of daytime storage and the program being reasonably available in the city of Santa Cruz. The language is too vague, and what is considered reasonable needs to be explicitly addressed for feasibility, like convenience of location. Also, while people with disabilities are exempt from moving their tents and belongings during the day, they still would have to move every 4 days. Breaking up encampments would make people lose contact with or have difficulty getting to their service providers. Nurses and social workers regularly visit encampments and would struggle to connect with, even completely lose touch with, the people for whom they provide care. Many unhoused people would be forced out of their current static spaces where they are more easily found during the day. They would also lose access to resources like community members and mutual aid groups who bring donations to encampments. This would cause irreparable harm to those who rely on those visits and supplies. Those who seek out services and resources would face a major boondoggle as they would have to prioritize packing up their space every day and setting it up every night and dropping off everything and picking it up every day. Furthermore, when people are scattered about, it becomes harder for the city to clean up because people aren't concentrated or allowed to stay in set places where sanitation resources, dumpsters, and regular trash pickup can be provided. Without giving people a consistent space during the day that has access to toilets, hand washing stations, and dumpsters, the issues would increase, become more dispersed, and therefore more difficult to deal with. There would also be an increased risk of harassment, violence, and even death when people who look out for each other in small communities are forced out of their spaces. In those communities, there's not only an increased prevention of harm, there's also a higher likelihood for intervention in case something does happen. People who choose to stick together in groups to look out for each other would have much greater difficulty continuing that practice when they can't stay put together. This disproportionately would adversely impact women, LGBTQ+, and people of color who are unhoused and have security with their camp neighbors. Finally, anyone who violates the ordinance twice in 30 days would be guilty of a misdemeanor. This would go against Martin v. Boise because it would make sleeping during the day in a tent illegal. In addition, people who prevent, delay, resist, obstruct, or otherwise interfere with any removal of personal property could get misdemeanors, which would be a violation of the First Amendment to freedom of speech and peaceful assembly. Instead of further criminalizing unhoused people, the city and county should stop neglecting their duties towards their own community members. The ordinance itself acknowledges the need to expand shelter capacity and very low-income, long-term housing options, etc. Yet there's no transparency on how federal funding to Santa Cruz County through the Housing Action Partnership is spent and how it can be effectively used. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker and the extra time speakers is Serge Cagno with Stepping Up Santa Cruz. Please press *9 on your phone and raise your hand. Go ahead, Serge.
Hold on, Donna, sorry.
Yep. PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead and unmute yourself, *6.
Does that work? time to listen. Thank you for the patience that you guys have shown tonight. It's a long evening, and I'll try to keep my comments brief. My name's Serge Cagno, Stepping Up Santa Cruz. I have a resource directory. I was also on the catch. And some of the materials that you guys were given in the packet from the Safe Sleep Committee, I actually wrote those. So I just want to clarify one thing. We did not support this ordinance. We said our first line of that, if you go to the documents, we do not support as written. And we were doing the best we could. If it was to be implemented, we had some suggestions, but we were not supporting the document. So just to be clear on that one. Could you go to the next slide, Bonnie? My sincere gratitude, that's two, there you go. My sincere gratitude and appreciation for Lee Butler, the amazing amount of work that everyone's put in trying to address the society's most complicated problem. There are a lot of good things that are trying to balance the life of people experiencing homelessness in this. And I can't list them all. I can't list all of the inaccuracies either, including how funding works or the relationship with the city and the HAP. The short version is the city manager is a voting member of the HAP executive and general boards to decide how homeless funds get spent throughout the county. So trying to blame the county for not doing more is a misunderstanding of the city manager's office's authority as a voting member. For this ordinance, let's tweak it in a couple ways. It's true that there's a lot more no you can'ts and trying to just have a reasonable expectation for somebody who's trying to live within the ordinance. We want to have clean and safe streets, and we want to get people housed. Can you switch to the next one, Bonnie? Really quickly, the issue is bathrooms. So right now, they can't go downtown, they can't sleep downtown in the ordinance or in parks, and that's where the bathrooms are. So my comment would be figure out where you're going to put them so that they're not urinating, defecating outside, because a lot of them don't want to. Bonnie, next slide. Disability is vague. By legal definition, that includes mental health diagnosis and substance use disorder. So who is deciding which kind of disability is allowed? That needs to be clarified. And inclement weather, raining, or heat. Next slide, Bonnie. To improve the ordinance, I would suggest creating a design work group, setting up people for success who don't want to break the law, clear outstanding tickets for those working with a case manager for volunteering, working, and receiving services, and find a nonprofit that will find funding they can find funding themselves to manage a fiscally viable managed encampment on city-owned lot. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Serge. We'll now move on to comments from individuals. It's 8:16, and I'll go till 9:10 tonight with this. Try to give ourselves a full hour. I'm sorry, 9:16 we'll go to. If you're interested in commenting on this item, please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. When it is your time to speak, you will hear an announcement that you've been unmuted. The timer will then be set to 1.5 minutes, and I will be stopping folks right at that 1.5 minute period of time. First up is KB Foster. Unmute your phone and please go.
Thank you. Santa Cruz has patience. Your emotion makes you louder, which means you get heard. We don't need to pretend money value the homeless. Please. We just need to value them. We do this by loving them like a child, because more often than not getting that is why they are acting out. They are acting outside of themselves. That's what homelessness is. That's the truth. The problem we have with that, well, it's hard to hear. It affects the masses more. It inflames the nation. Growing pains don't need pain medicine or opiates. That isn't working. Why? Because you're ignoring the roots, the feelers, the feelings, the sensitives. Don't be scared of the homeless. They simply have the anti-serving genes. What a nerve. So corporations don't like them. Well, then it's our job to show them love. Thank you. My name is Bryce Foster. My phone number is 831-331-7016 if you want to work with me.
Next up is Brandon Dallas. Please press *6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry about that. Didn't know I was going to be up so quick. So just to get it right out of the way, I'm a hard no on this one. I really urge you guys to vote no on this ordinance. I really appreciate how articulately some people have spoken to it. I'm probably not going to be quite so articulate. But, I mean, really, you're trying to strike a balance here. That's the claim. But as far as I can tell, the things you're trying to strike a balance between are people need to live and to have a place to live. And on the other hand, people need to not be near poor people. And that's not something that's not balancing. You know, like you can't put people's need to live on the scale. It's just ridiculous. I'm a little angry. I'm very disgusted. I think you guys need to like take a look in the mirror, check in with God or whatever, do some meditation, because this is really pretty foul, in my opinion. And I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Next up is phone number ending in 6278.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Laura Lee Martin. I'm a 30-year resident of Prospect Heights, and I've submitted a letter, so I'll keep this very short. I support passage of the ordinance with a request for an amendment to designate De La Viega Park off limits, all of the park, all year. There is no fire season anymore. And I'd suggest we also look at Pogonip the same way. This request for an amendment is based on three things: fire safety. I'm from Paradise, California, and very aware of the risks that we have here. I'm a co-founder of Firewise in Prospect Heights. We've had numerous fire events over the years in this neighborhood, and we worked with the fire department to help clear out the underbrush. Any camping in this park creates a tremendous liability on the city for potential firestorm that will easily inundate adjacent neighborhoods. It's the wildland-urban interface concern. We also, another important one is armory. The neighbors really supported the armory use for the homeless. We worked with you when you wanted to extend the use and extend the time of that use and increase the population. And during that time, the city explicitly assured us numerous times that no camping or homeless would be permitted outside of the compound of the armory. So this is, unless the entire park is off limits, then that promise is being broken. And last, I would say that public safety. I no longer feel safe on any of the trails up in the De La Viega area or even on my street out front. Finally, thank you all for taking this extremely complex issue on, many layers, and thank you for sending your letter to the governor.
Thank you. Next up is Tiffany Worthington.
Hi, thanks so much for this discussion. Just real quick, I have, three requests on behalf of Santa Cruz citizens whose homes border the levee. My request is that the camping not be allowed on the, I think it's called the outboard area behind our homes, such as Riverside Avenue. In my experience as a resident here along the levee, the hours between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. are not often used by campers for sleeping, but more often for drug dealing, screaming obscenities, drumming, loud music, fighting, and using our front and backyards for vomiting and defecating. I mean, this is like nightly. It's serious. And anybody who doesn't realize it clearly doesn't live next to it. So that's one request, not allow camping in the outboard or, on the home side of the path. the levy. And then number two, to address the health hazard that is this uncontained human waste, which is very serious for both homeless people and for anyone else, I propose there's these really cheap. It's so easy. We could there's cheap, environmentally friendly, temporary mobile compost toilets. They're easy to assemble. We did it during the wildfire in areas like Last Chance, and there's hand washing stations known as tippy taps. Really easy, and we should definitely put them up, and people should have a place to go to the bathroom. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I just want to remind people that if you do want to speak, you should raise your hand so that we can tell that you're part of the queue. Beth Prentice is next, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for having this open forum. So, similar to the last caller, yeah, the people who are opposed to this seem to be very out of touch with how these encampments are being used. I also live on Riverside. I have an encampment literally on the other side of my back fence, and I'm not a wealthy landowner gentrifier. I'm a social worker and educator. I rent, and I'm just trying to feel safe. I don't feel safe walking around my neighborhood. I heard one of the people opposed talking about people being like queer women. I am a queer woman, and I've been harassed walking with my partner with homophobic comments coming from people from the encampment. I feel unsafe as a woman walking past groups of men who have also made comments to me. And then there's just the garbage. There's people defecating right behind my fence when there are bathrooms nearby. And so there is shouting, there's cussing, there's loud music all day long. People are not using the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the most part to look for jobs in the encampment behind my house. So these people who are opposed are talking about the exceptions that are actually proving the rule that what's going on is enabling drug use and crime. And so I just ask that the city council stand up for community members who are trying to keep this community alive and contribute and stop enabling the drug use. And I'll give up the rest of my time. Thank you.
Next is KB. Please press *6 and you can speak.
Hi, I'm Kay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I've noticed that a lot of people have been like thanking and kind of like clearing and clapping that you guys have brought this ordinance to the table. But honestly, this really reads like you guys like use like a single brain cell, like in a ping pong video game to make this ordinance up. Like, it doesn't, as people have said, it's definitely punitive action that's like just going against folks that have been dealing with a very, very difficult year. So let's like summarize a little bit of what Santa Cruz has been going through in the last year in the news, at least, not even on homeless situations. So we had earlier in the summer with Santa Cruz folks on the boardwalk spitting on like folks' food and not actually letting them be able to sell stuff. And then we had again follow up with Bernal and trying to get encampments out. You follow up with the fact that there was a California fires that definitely put a lot of people out of housing, which Santa Cruz actually stepped up and actually did something. And then that all kind of went away when everything seemed to settle. Like, I don't understand how we have folks who have been in these positions and these roles of power, and you finally have the chance to do something, and you're giving us a maybe we can assess it, like, yet again. Like, you didn't think maybe we should work with the current homeless programs and like see what we could do together? Like, that in no thoughts, head empty. It just makes me like very upset that like people's money are going into your pocket. Like, why are we paying you for this? It makes me very upset. Please.
Thanks. Next is Sabina Holber. Please press *6. Excuse me.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I want to state something really obvious. The solution for houseless individuals is to actually house them and not criminalize them. Everybody in your presentation kept talking about how this won't solve homelessness or houselessness, and we all agree on that issue. So I want to know what the council is actually doing to solve these problems. For instance, you said that there's 401 beds available now. That is a laughably small number for the amount of houseless individuals that are here. The fact that it was 155 beds pre-COVID is ridiculous. So I really want to see what the council is going to do to expand the beds. The other thing is that you put up these photos of trash and debris to shame houseless people, but I have a home and I have trash service, and if we had trash service, maybe we wouldn't have those many issues, and just shaming people for not having a place to put their trash is really wrong. The needle issue that was shown would be greatly helped by a fully funded needle exchange program. I was looking into this issue, and Renee Golder is personally suing to stop that program. So I would like to ask that she recuse herself from this vote due to conflict of interest. You guys know there are real problems, and just banning houseless people from public spaces is not solving it. I also want to mention that I've lived on the West Side for years, and I've never heard of the West Side Neighbors group that spoke earlier. Represent me or my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Stacey Falls.
Okay.
Press *6. Go ahead, please. Can't hear you. Please press *6 and you should be unmuted. Are you there, Stacey? Go ahead, you're unmuted. Bonnie, is there anything I should be telling her to try to do differently?
No, she's unmuted, so there's something on her end. Oh, wait.
Are you there? Stacey, I'll come back to you. I don't know why we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Let me come back to you. Next is Mars.
What the heck?
Oh, there you go. We heard you.
The host just muted you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hello?
That's all eight.
My alt is. Hello?
Alt is right here.
Yep, we can hear you, Stacey.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Mayor Myers, will you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, because I can't hear you, so I'm not sure you can actually hear me.
Yep.
Great, okay, good. Before we start, there's two of us here on the same computer. Can we both have time on this computer?
You have 1.5 minutes.
I can't hear you, but I'll just assume that was a yes. Okay.
1.5 minutes. 1 minute.
Only one person, and then I have to get back in the queue for my husband to speak as well?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to start my time. Hopefully I haven't eaten up my whole 1.5 minutes. Okay, my name is Stacey Falls. I actually just bought a house at the corner of Riverside and Broadway, about a block away from the San Lorenzo encampment. And I bike through San Lorenzo Park every single day, and I know that there are some problems with the encampment, but unequivocally, I am opposed to this ordinance. I was opposed before I heard the presentation tonight, and then I heard the presentation tonight, and it's such a confusing ordinance. Like, if I want to camp someplace because I'm homeless, I have to consult with a meteorologist to know what the weather conditions are, and then I have to consult with some, like, biological expert who can tell me if the Ohlone beetles are having a mating season right now, and then I have to take a tape measure with me to make sure I'm 75 feet away from the trail. I mean, it's crazy. And all we're doing is basically trying to work around Martin v. Boise to continue the camping ban. And I have lived in the city for 2 decades, and we've had a camping ban most of the time I've been here, and it has been a
an abject failure. It has been a failure to the people who sleep outside. It's been a failure to the people who live in the neighborhoods who are impacted by all of the negative impacts that were described in the presentation. And it overwhelms our criminal justice system with, just endless cases of people who can't pay their fines. They're just trying to find a place to sleep outside. So criminalizing homelessness is a problem because it disrupts community, it disrupts the ability for social workers or folks. I think I'm cut off. I can't hear anything anymore, but I guess I'll go back into the queue so my husband can speak. Vote no, please. It's not good for the entire city.
Okay, next up is Mars, please. Press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm here to read a letter from the ACLU. The ACLU of Northern California condemns the increased regulations targeting unhoused individuals in Santa Cruz and urges the City Council to reject a proposal to establish Ordinance number 2021 amending Chapter 6.36, currently entitled Camping, and hereafter entitled Regulations for Temporary Order Living of the Santa Cruz Municipal Code. Numerous courts have iterated the rights of unhoused people seeking necessary shelter, and in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic that has already devastated local economies and exacerbated poor living conditions, barring individuals from sheltering is not only inhumane, but will lead to catastrophic health risks. And while the ordinance language suggests that it abides by Martin versus City of Boise, this is not true. By criminalizing the act of sleeping through strict prohibitions, the ordinance likely violates the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution under Ninth Circuit precedent. The City of Santa Cruz has historically and continues to target unhoused populations despite an expansion of shelter capacity. Limiting unhoused individuals' ability to seek shelter will only further escalate the public health crisis, especially when they are forced to move from location to location. Additionally, it places an increased mental and physical burden on individuals who are already struggling to find a warm and safe place to sleep during the winter months. A number of the unhoused population are families who have been displaced from the recent fires, having lost any stability from one catastrophe to the next. Prior attempts by the City of Santa Cruz to manage unsheltered homelessness via ordinances targeting a ban on sleeping in public has been deemed unconstitutional and ineffective. Today's ordinance is similarly problematic in that it will fail to address and mitigate the environmental and social impact of encampments that city leaders are touting to be. Thank you.
Next up is Nancy Cruz. Press *6. Press start. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. I'm Nancy Crusoe. I've been a lot of years, volunteer for years in homelessness programs. I oppose this ordinance because it criminalizes homelessness, denies stability and security, and offers nothing beneficial. I feel it's your job to represent all of us, and this ordinance does not. It's destabilizing. Individuals are to take down and set up a camp every day. This city should not require that of anyone, much less elderly and disabled people, a large portion of our homeless community. We know it's stability that encourages health and healing and community building. This ordinance is unreasonably complicated and will lead to increased encounters with the justice system, yet we know encounters with law enforcement produce profoundly negative consequences for homeless individuals. That's one of the primary reasons the public asks for and demonstrated to you the value of programs like Cahoots. However, this proposal goes in the opposite direction, will mean more overtime for police, create more trauma and more cost. It contains so many caveats and exceptions that people will struggle to know where to be any day, store and unstore their belongings in return for.
Thank you very much. Next up is phone number ending in 1229.
Hi. Hi, my name is Madison, and I've been a resident of Santa Cruz for 5 years. I'm calling to urge you all to oppose this ordinance. It's hard for me to believe I even have to make the case for this. curtailing the right of the unhoused to seek shelter at the height of a pandemic is breathtakingly cruel, and you all know that. The problem is that most of you lack the courage and the political will to enact real solutions to homelessness in Santa Cruz. Mayor Myers, you wrote to the governor asking for assistance only to look like you were doing something. The fact that you would bring forth this ordinance, which further criminalizes homelessness and deepens the cycle of poverty among the unhoused, shows that you don't really care. What you care about is pushing the homeless out of sight and out of mind to placate wealthy residents and businesses. In a recent Sentinel article, Ben Shiro, a man who was homeless in Santa Cruz for 15 years, told his story about how he built up $15,000 in debt from homelessness-related citations. His story is not uncommon. It is the norm in a city that ruthlessly criminalizes being unhoused. So please explain to me, how will increasing citations and fines for seeking shelter lift the unhoused out of a cycle of poverty and end the crisis in Santa Cruz? If you can't answer that question, I implore you to vote no on this ordinance.
Thank you. The next caller ends in numbers 1657. Press *6 to unmute. There you go.
I'm Anna Brooks. I changed my testimony after going through the public correspondence because of my disillusionment by many comments on both sides of the issue. I saw no mention of what I perceive as the elephant in the room. Santa Cruz needs a permanent homeless shelter, but the Santa Cruz community doesn't want to put one anywhere. The community says it wants to help the unsheltered, but as far as I'm aware, when specific locations are proposed, the sentiment continues to be, oh no, don't put it there. The Martin v. Boise decision was nearly 2 years ago, and the Supreme Court denied hearing the case later that year. People can say what they want. The decision stands. If shelter space isn't available, preventing camping becomes highly problematic. With a heavy heart and great hesitancy, I support the ordinance. But let me be clear why. The Santa Cruz community has failed to come together and agree upon where to put a permanent shelter. If enough camping occurs in residential areas, perhaps residents will be compelled to advocate more productively for a location for a permanent shelter. It will cause a great deal of pain for all, especially our unhoused. But I do consider residential areas sure seem safer to me than places like Pocanip and De La Viega for more reasons than I have time to outline here.
Thank you. Next up, I have caller ending in the last 4 digits, 5754. Please press *6.
Hello, dear Mayor Myers and City Council members. My name is Deborah Elston. I support this outdoor living ordinance, and I'm calling you to speak for the seniors who live on Dakota, across the street from the San Lorenzo Park. They are essentially living next to a nuisance property. Here they are living in their enjoyable twilight years. Some actually chose to live in this location because of the quietness, the convenience to downtown shopping, and a senior community. Now they are lucky if they get to sleep through the night or even feel safe. They are living across from a nuisance property. If there was an ordinance like this would have never happened. One senior described that she couldn't even get her dinner delivered one night because the person delivering the meal didn't even feel safe delivering to that address. The park and all it brings with it, partying, drug dealers, a goat, and a boat. Mental illness, selling drugs, noise all hours of the day and night, and the safety of walking for groceries has been a daily challenge for these seniors. They should not have to deal with all this activity. It's exhausting for them. You, as a council, can change the situation. Please pass the temporary outdoor living ordinance and let's support regulations that help our whole community. Thank you very much for your time.
Next up, we have phone number ending in 2885.
Hello, Mark Lewis, a longtime resident of Santa Cruz. A virtual process where the public is barred from in-person participation has to be addressed before this item is allowed to go forward to a vote. The homeless, whom by and large do not have the requisite connectivity, digital literacy, or digital tools to vigorously defend themselves, have been disenfranchised by the virtual process, unable to be heard, made invisible, as if their voices do not matter. Consequently, a point of further litigation, as well testimony to a council refuting participation by all whom live in Santa Cruz. I am requesting on behalf of the homeless whom reside in the city of Santa Cruz that the council hold on any further action on this item until such time that the council chambers or suitable alternatives are opened to in-person participation. This concludes my statement. Thank you.
Ending in 1150.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Kelsey Hill. I'm calling to urge that the leaders on this dais vote no on item 25. I, of course, understand calls for environmental protection and safety, but this ordinance as drafted only serves the interest of people who have the privilege of being sheltered at this perilous time in our history, and it does not solve the crises that it claims to. Lee Butler himself over and over again noted that this is not a solution. This ordinance does nothing to mitigate the stressors on those who sleep outside, and it only amplifies them. Could any of you on this dais break down and set up your possessions in such a routine and also work toward being rehoused and employed? We're also in a pandemic that's killed 500,000 people across this country and 172 people in our county from a virus that disproportionately impacts vulnerable groups, including unhoused people. Dispersal policies don't work, and they threaten individuals' ability to distance, sanitize, and practice other methods of slowing the spread of COVID-19. Moreover, this ordinance only further pushes people experiencing houselessness to the margin and makes it more difficult for them to recover from cycles of trauma, addiction, or mental health issues. Human-first approaches are more effective and more cost-efficient in the long term, and I know all of you know this on the dais. Meanwhile, criminalization is expensive. In Colorado, 6 cities spent over $5.1 million enforcing camping bans from 2010 to 2014. And in 2021, Denver can't even calculate what it has spent on sweeps and enforcement, but even the conservative estimates are not pretty. And that doesn't even touch on the threat of lawsuits that Councilmember Cummings mentions. I cannot for the life of me fathom how Bernal and staff thinks this is a good idea. Thank you.
Next up is number 1810. Press star 6, please.
Yeah, it's Garrett Phillip. It feels like old times. The adoptive grievance mongers are back. What a country. I mostly endorse, but would like to see further improvements to the ordinance insofar as the ordinance essentially seems to give permission for a near permanent outdoor nighttime camping on private property in a very high density number and on public streets, sidewalks, and residential neighborhoods at night. The era of people squatting wherever they like, however they like, for as long as they like, and any numbers they like, should come to a close in our small, somewhat politically confused city. It's a big country with a lot of opportunity, and I see no positive purpose that Santa Cruz should be the county dump and caretaker for unlimited homeless individuals doing what some do now. As to the details of the ordinance, quote, as expressly authorized in the yard of a residence with the consent of the owner or occupant of the residence where the camping is in the rear yard, etc., is an acceptable camping area for one person seems defined as 12 by 12 feet. Does that mean in my 50 by 50 backyard, like mine, theoretically permits 16 to 17 people to camp in a willing backyard unless they violated other sections? You should go further in defining what residential zoning districts might allow what density limits are to be for private property residential area backyard camping, which should be far less than that. These are the same types of homeless camping densities rejected by thousands of city residents when the city proposed camps in neighborhoods not long ago. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Next up is phone number ending in 1018. 10818. Press star 6. press star 6. We can't hear you yet. Phone number ending in 1018. Okay, we can't hear.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Hi, my name is TJ Demos, and as a West Side Santa Cruz homeowner, I urge you to reject this anti-homeless ordinance, which clearly undermines and attempts to circumvent Martin versus Boise and CDC guidelines contra Lee Butler's presentation. The confusing ordinance with its Byzantine maps of prohibition and preposterous demands for continual packing up of one's belongings, especially harsh on disabled folks, will only add to the worst of Santa Cruz's policies of intolerance, fee and fining, policing and criminality, targeting and exploiting the most vulnerable, also the most racially diverse of our community, without, of course, including any of them in the discussion. NIMBY ordinance, which favors endless evictions over compassionate services, comes from a place of cruelty and is only counterproductive. In the spirit of health in all policies, I urge you to reject the outdoor camping ban. It's clear that Santa Cruz City and County are lacking in available shelter for people suffering houselessness. The cold-hearted ordinances like this do nothing but harm the most exposed, criminalizing them with citations when they have nowhere to go, ticketing them when they have no money to pay, and destroying their possessions when they have nothing else, and weaponizing discriminatory environmentalism against them, as in the highly biased images and info and fear-mongering presented by Lee Butler and Tony Elliott. The failed police approach of enforcing itinerancy to prevent so-called entrenchment is not only heartless and mean, it's illegal and unconstitutional. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up is Gabriel Cohn. Please press star 6.
Yeah, hi. I just want to keep this short. I also oppose the camping ban. I think criminalization is not a solution. It's not going to change the fundamental realities that are causing people to live outdoors. I was thinking about this is being very similar to my job as a teacher right now. We're dealing with kids who are dealing with a lot of crises and traumas while dealing with schooling online. And simply yelling at them or failing them doesn't accomplish the goal of helping further their education. Instead, we try to find ways to meet them where they're at and help them create a new and perhaps different path forward so that they can actually have some success in schooling. Likewise, punishing someone further for their lack of resources is not going to magically help them find housing. And I would instead urge the city to consider ways that we can redirect funding away from criminalization towards solutions to actually help those in need. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is phone number ending in 7343.
Hello. As a working-class resident of Santa Cruz who's experienced bike theft, a car break-in, and an assault on the riverfront, I encourage the City Council to vote yes and adopt these ordinances immediately. What I see in Santa Cruz does concern me when it comes to homelessness, but by and large, the behavior perpetrated by the homeless are not good for the community at large, especially families and children. We need to take them into account when we consider how we approach this very difficult issue. I'd also like to draw the council members as well as the community's attention to a recent podcast YouTube video by a homeless advocate named Theo Henderson called We the Unhoused. It's episode number 40, and it's focused on Santa Cruz. In the video, he interviews a number of residents of San Lorenzo Park and other encampments. None of these people are from Santa Cruz. All of them have obvious mental health and drug dependency issues. I think we need to stop encouraging more people to come to Santa Cruz with these type of issues so that we can focus on the people who want and need help. Our budget and resources are limited. We need to focus them appropriately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up is phone number ending in 4656.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Father Joseph Jacobs. I'm the program manager for the Association of Faith Communities Safe Parking Program. Association of Faith Communities is a local nonprofit based here in Santa Cruz, and we are a coalition of over 30 faith-based communities in Santa Cruz and Santa Cruz County. I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who is working so hard to solve this illness, and I do believe it is a social collective illness. And I believe we cannot legislate our homeless away. And they are our homeless, despite the cynical views of some. We must embrace, nurture, and heal our common illness called homelessness. I have done my homework on statistics for people in the Safe Parking Program. Over 60% of them are from Santa Cruz. Nearly 80% are from Santa Cruz County. This notion that we are attracting people from outside of Santa Cruz because it's fun to live on the street or camp or something is specious. I'm encouraging and asking everyone to be more compassionate, not less. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is ending in phone number 2279. You should be able to speak. We can't hear you. Are you unmuted? You look unmuted.
Hi there. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yep.
Great. Thanks. Hello, my name is Graham Edwards. I live just a few blocks from San Lorenzo Park, and I would like to urge the council to vote no on item 25. Earlier speakers have stated that this is not criminalizing houseless folks, but the outlined ordinance would functionally criminalize and punish and terrorize homeless people. I implore you to allow my homeless neighbors and community members to shelter and to actually invest in truly affordable housing rather than veiled luxury development. Also, as a climate and earth scientist, I would like to speak to some of these concerns of habitat destruction. The landscaped lawns of these green space parks are not natural ecosystems to the Santa Cruz area. The argument appealing to natural habitat destruction are moot as the natural habitats are already destroyed. These fabricated landscapes may as well be used for a common good, providing a living space for community members. Also, with respect to concerns for mountain bikers, these are the greatest destroyers of natural landscapes, these mountain bikes, and it is a hobby for the extremely wealthy. And the majority of Santa Cruz residents, such as myself, live much more financially close to losing our apartments and becoming homeless than to pleasure riding on our multi-$1,000 mountain bikes. I hope you will give as much attention to our hopes for our community as the wealthy class you seem so attuned to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Gail McNulty. Please press star 6.
Hi, thank you so much. I am a white mother of 3 children, 2 of whom attend middle and high school in the city of Santa Cruz during non-socially distanced time. I'm also an anti-racist climate advocate. As a Bonnie Doon resident, I was displaced for a month and a half this summer, so I'm well aware of the complications of the urban-wildlife interface. That said, I oppose this ordinance in part because it continues a message that poverty is a crime and should be hidden, when in fact poverty is an inexcusable repercussion of the same failing economic system that's destroying our ecosystems and our children's shared future. As a parent, I believe it's time we start modeling for our children how to use creativity, compassion, and courage to solve this difficult problem. And I'm afraid that this ordinance fails to do all of these things. I really do think that while I believe everybody in this discussion has a desire to do the right thing, the proposal being proposed here is completely failing to do that. So this is the end game, guys. We are witnessing the end of time as we know it, and we need to reinvent the future. We need to do it with much more creativity, compassion, and courage than what's being proposed tonight. So So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is phone number ending in 4257. You press *6, you should be able to unmute. If you press *6, you should be able to unmute. We can't hear you. There you go.
Hello?
Hello? We can hear you. We can hear you, but you have an echo. I think you did.
Is that better?
Yes, you need to turn down your TV if you have your TV on.
Yes. Here we go.
It's still a little bit hard to hear you, but we can hear you better now without the echo. No. Bonnie, help me out. Should we tell her to turn off her TV, or what's the best way to do this?
Are we better?
There we go, a little bit. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
I don't think it's her TV. I think maybe it's just her connection.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Could you call back in? Well, yeah, we can't hear you, unfortunately. We can't hear anything.
I'll write her number down, Mayor. So
Okay.
she wants to call back in.
Thank you. Next up is phone number 8883. Press *6, please.
Hi. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, my name is Trish Unruh, and I've been living downtown Santa Cruz for the past 25 years. And I'm calling to support the ordinances that will regulate outdoor living and vagrancy in Santa Cruz. I am supporting this ordinance because it will help create a city that is safe and healthy for all of its citizens, including the homeless population. I want a city where the environment and our parks are protected and our resources are taken care of. Right now, there are many areas in Santa Cruz that are no longer accessible to the general public because they have been taken over by permanent campers. This includes San Lorenzo Park, the Levee, Harvey West Park, Pogonus, and many areas downtown. Because we live downtown, we see on a daily basis the problems associated with these unmanaged encampments. There are many incidents that occur in front of our houses. There are fights, thefts, overdoses, and we're needing to call 911 3 to 4 times a month. Just last week, I had to call 911 because I was threatened while going on a run on Laurel Street by a homeless man under the influence who threatened to kill me. My husband is a Santa Cruz City Parks worker, and he and his coworkers have had incidents of being attacked when they're trying to clean up parks. They have been stabbed by improperly discarded needles, been verbally harassed, and threatened when asking campers to move out of playgrounds and bathrooms. Please support the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is phone number 9869.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Bennett Hopkins. I've lived in Santa Cruz for 5 years now, and I oppose this measure. Just hearing about it, I'd like to ask, if you want people to move, where are they really supposed to go? Because looking at the map that was put up, they basically just blocked off every area that you could realistically camp and still have access to a bathroom, a convenience or grocery store, I don't know, any kind of facilities that you may need to live. These people aren't camping outside because they want to. They are because they have to. They've been forced out of their previous living situations. All of the surveys referenced in the presentation also show that the majority of the homeless people in Santa Cruz are from Santa Cruz. They are and still are, they are and were our neighbors. I think we need to remember that. And this ordinance is not really acknowledging that. It's just a punitive measure. It really only seeks to make people's life outside harder than it already is. I really urge you to oppose it. I think that this is just incredibly wrong. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is, it looks like just one Taj.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Myers and council members. I'm going to speak as quickly as I can. So I'd like to echo Council Member Cummings' comments about potentially getting sued. I think that it should be taken with a lot of weight. That sounds about right to me. I'd like to say to the general community that I feel like this ordinance coming up right now is to deal with like nuisance and unsafe encampments, which do exist. They're not every homeless or houseless person, but there are places where it's getting pretty bad. And so I think I'm assuming this is an attempt to deal with that. And also, as we've seen in the past, some of these encampments do just get bigger and bigger and get more out of control. All right. However, that said, I'm not sure if this is the way to do it. Camping ban in the daytime, it's just like what other callers have said. It's going to move people around a little bit too much. I don't know if this is the right way to go about getting those particular things done. However, I also know that legally it's very limited in what tools there are for our local government to actually deal with some of the issues that are arising and in terms of balancing everyone's needs, people that are in houses, people that are not in houses. And that's what we have to do as a community. Let's see. Also, people that are just coming to these meetings now, there's actually a lot being done. Oh my God. Okay.
Thank you, Taj. I'm sorry, we short time. Apologize for that. Next person up is 7003.
I am really tired of hearing this narrative about the folks in Santa Cruz. The homeless folks are from Santa Cruz, and they used to be our neighbors, or are still our neighbors, and that they, excuse me, wouldn't possibly choose this lifestyle. But don't believe me. Let's hear it from somebody that was interviewed by Robert Norris on his radio show. Hang on. This fella, if you caught that, he's a vagabond. He ended up in Santa Cruz because he's a free spirit, and he just decided to stay because they weren't going to clear the camp. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we've got maybe 8 more people to go, and then we will be stopping public comment right at 9:16. We've got phone number 4931. Ending in 4931. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, this is Rachel Chavez, and I'm calling today as a nurse and a Lower Ocean resident to voice my vehement opposition to this ordinance.
In the city's Health and All Policies fact sheet, we are reminded of the differences between equality and equity. Equity, which the city now claims to prioritize, acknowledges that not everyone starts from the same place and asks us to make structural change to ensure that people have access to similar opportunities and resources. If passed, this ordinance will further the already drastic inequity in our community by criminalizing some of our most vulnerable residents, thus negatively impacting their social determinants of health, which, as the Health and All Policies reminds us, is a harbinger of inequity. If council members truly believe that health and equity should exist in all policies, then they must understand that we only get there by centering and uplifting the most disadvantaged members of our community, which in turn makes a better city for everyone. Either acknowledge that the content and spirit of this ordinance opposes the stated goal of health and all policies, or admit that the intent was always just to punish people who have been judged as not worthy and to pacify those who find themselves loudly inconvenienced by having to witness people living in dire straits. Additionally, I would just like to make it known that I hike regularly alone in Pogonip and walk through downtown using encampments, and I've personally never felt threatened by any homeless person. Anyone with an ounce of common sense can see that this ordinance will only make homelessness and its equality significantly worse for all Santa Cruz residents. If you don't want to see trash build up, set up regular trash pickup. Want to see less human waste, build bathrooms. Want to see less needles, safe injection sites. Sharps containers everywhere. Nonsensical. Don't know.
Next up, I have Ashley Wheel.
Can you hear me?
Can.
Hello, my name is Ashley Weil. I'm a Santa Cruz resident, and I urge you to oppose this ordinance. As a natural resource manager, firefighter, and public land employee of a local public agency, I'm a conservationist, and I find it asinine and dehumanizing, not to mention neoliberal and performative, to even try to claim that this ordinance is remotely concerned with environmental degradation. We all know that those who consume the most are those that destroy this planet. Additionally, when I think of degradation of sensitive habitats, my mind goes to clear cutting with the goal of increased line of sight for police and the disturbance caused by police vehicle access. Further, Lee Butler reported on alleged attacks on DPR employees, but failed to mention vigilante and police assaults on our houseless neighbors. And on that note, why were we only presented with mountain bikers that report feeling unsafe recreating as opposed to houseless neighbors who feel unsafe while trying to survive? Again, as a Santa Cruz resident, I urge you to vote no on this ordinance. It is dehumanizing and disgusting. Thank you.
Next up is Wes White.
Go ahead. Hello, Wes White, Salinas resident, co-president of Salinas Monterey County Homeless Union. And I guess I was urging you to say no as well, just like everyone else. Also, I'd try to point you in the direction of the continuum of care here in Monterey and San Benito counties. They're kind of leading the way in the state for, Project Room Key and actually treating people like people. Have you taken a head count of how many people you plan to displace with no alternative to go? Are they just supposed to fall off the checkerboard? Did they lose at the casino of life here? So the enforcement is crazy off the top. But you should work more in collaboration. We've actually locked down Salinas pretty good. They're the county seat here in Monterey County, and they're not conducting sweeps. They're actually trying to be humanistic. And, so I'd point that out as well. If you're going to vote yes on this, you may as well you're voting against humanity and you're turning in humanity as well. So you should vote no on this. You should totally revamp and just table it, honestly. That way you don't have to embarrass yourself with a vote to even admit how little humanity you have. This is about business. We worry so much about separation of church and state. Now we get to worry about separation of business and state, because this is where it's at right now. It's big money, there's little people, and there has to be a lot of losers for there to be a few winners. And we just need to stop this game altogether. Do better.
Press star 6, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're a little bit light. If you could speak a little louder.
How about now?
That's great.
I just wanted to say Santa Cruz is a really beautiful place, and it's disheartening to see so many people supporting those who would spend their time justifying tactics that they've already been sued for, while ignoring all the effective things that charities or housing plans could provide. There's no housing for low-income people, either unhoused or housed. And I think this is just like a appetizer for the poor people who get sick or injured in Santa Cruz. They see exactly what's going to happen to them. Protesters want to keep shooting themselves in the foot while being as cruel as possible. The ordinance will fail. It's a paper-thin goal. It's barely a change from the thing they've been doing for 10 years, and it's just going to inevitably bloat the already over $30 million police budget. If you're okay paying jail time and court costs and evictors' salaries who keep people in a cycle of inescapable poverty to justify what they do, then by all means vote yes. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Up, we have phone number ending in 8925. Phone number ending in 8925, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Maria Solis Kennedy, and I live in Santa Cruz, right near San Lorenzo Park. I'm originally from Boise, Idaho, a city that has wasted millions of dollars already on an anti-homeless lawsuit, and it looks like the city of Santa Cruz wants to follow in its footsteps and fight the spirit of the Boise versus Martin, and I'm really surprised because when I moved from such a conservative place to a democratically controlled city, I thought that I would encounter a different attitude towards the poor and the houseless, and I'm really disappointed in the spirit of this ordinance, and I urge City Council to vote no. I also want to attest that as a young woman who lives very close to San Lorenzo Park and walks through frequently, I've never felt threatened and I've never felt unsafe. I continue to use the park regularly. If people are scared of the poor people that live in the park, I don't think criminalization is the answer. I think that will exacerbate the problem, and I think we should act with compassion. I would just like to add that if the city and the park system is short of money, then I suggest that you look at defunding the police and cutting the police budget and not increasing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This will be our last caller tonight. Your number ends in 5446.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Amy Liebachuk, and I'm a 9-year city resident and social worker. I'm asking that you vote against this ordinance. From Mr. Butler and Mr. Elliott's presentation, it appears we can all agree that this ordinance will not alleviate homelessness in our community. This ordinance, as outlined, is inhumane and seeks to undermine Martin versus Boise by limiting a person's right to sleep to the hours of 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. This ordinance wastes Santa Cruz police officers' time during a budget crisis, giving warnings and $20 citations to houseless residents, thereby criminalizing homelessness. This ordinance cites environmental degradation as the underlying issue, so I would propose that the City Council instead focus their efforts on providing trash receptacles and bathroom facilities to homeless encampments to resolve this issue. I also hope that the city and county can continue to partner to expand existing programs that do value the rights and lives of people experiencing homelessness, including safe parking programs, shelters, and supportive permanent housing programs, and hope to see transitional encampments added to the list. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last public speaker. I have council member